Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session on digital identity. Over the last 2 years, we've seen an acceleration in digital transformation, which has seen a number of the digital economies grow so quickly that we need to start finding the solutions for them to be able to manage the identity issue. During today's panel, what we'll be investigating is how mobile operators and the wider ecosystem can actually bridge that gap and start looking into the solutions which can be used, and in particular, eKYC. We have a fantastic panel today happening with representatives from TeleSign and Ant, and I'll be moderating that later on. And then we've got a fantastic keynote which will be delving into the concept of decentralized identity from SKT. But as we're all aware, the landscape of digital identity is continuing to grow, with new and new use cases happening every single day. And we now need to find the solutions which will not only solve this from a mobile operator perspective and a mobile industry perspective, but then also start to develop the solutions that can be integrated into the different areas and different verticals to solve the similar challenges that are being faced. So during today's panel, we'll discuss the different ways in which operator assets can be used to support the growth of that area. Alongside today's specific panel, I'd just like to make everybody aware that the GSMA also runs an industry group which is aimed at looking to develop these identity solutions and grow the market with a wide breadth of participation. And within that group, we discuss a number of the key topics. We look at how we can solve some of those. We even start to develop trials and pilots amongst a number of different partners so that we can start to prove what the business case looks like. But with all of that said, I'd like to just now introduce our first speaker to come up to the stage. Ing Chang Ho from SKT will give us an insight into the decentralized solution which they have deployed.
Everybody, thank you everybody for coming here. My name is Ing Chang Ho from SK Telecom. SK Telecom is the largest mobile network operator in South Korea. We have around 44% market share. And SK Telecom runs identities and authentication businesses also. Today's presentation is about the title is a 3-year journey to decentralized identity. There are two keywords here, 3-year and decentralized identity. 3 years ago, Dr. Lee from my company came here and he presented about decentralized identity concept and some use cases. For 3 years, we practiced some areas, and I'm going to share what we've learned through these practices. And next keyword is decentralized ID. There are two types of ID. One is for the digital world ID. The second is the physical world ID. Digital world ID is used for when you log in some site, and physical world ID is used when you prove yourself, such as that the government-issued ID or driver license card or passport, student ID card, and so on. But decentralized ID is good for digitalizing physical world ID, and it is also good for privacy. So I'm going to tell you about more detail later. Looking back, digital transformation has been very wild and active in Korea. Digital transformation of physical ID was one of them. Firstly, when internet service began in 1990s, people used the government-issued ID for internet service identifying people. But for security reasons, applications of a social security number to private area and commercial area were prohibited by law. And Korean government made alternative digital ID called iPin and MyPin. but only a small number of people use those alternative ID systems. Thus, Korea government introduced another ID system. This is more secure, and in 1999, they introduced the national PKI. Government had enforced the people to use national PKI system by law. It's used for using some bank or for public services. So it's used widely, but it's not easy to use. Then the government, mobile network operator, and other companies come together and cooperate to make more reliable and easy to use ID systems. We call it the connecting ID, simply CI or CID in Korea. Government trusts mobile network operator ID system because in Korea, mobile network operator has some kind of a KYC process. As the CI system was easy to use and very reliable and safety, it's used widely in Korea. Thus, mobile network operator in Korea is providing the ID systems. That's why we are interested in ID technology evolution in 2019. In 2019, we found the ID system is evolving from siloed ID to federated ID to decentralized identity. Siloed ID is the ID when you log in some specific site, and federated ID is the system allows multiple websites to access. In federated ID systems, there are social login and single sign-on. Siloed ID and federated ID is made for login, but both ID systems were not for digitalizing physical world ID. So, DID can apply to digitalized ID cards, certificate, and at the same time, it can be used for login. And also, privacy of DID is better than that of our CI system. So we thought DID could be a promising technology to mobile network operator in Korea. We brainstormed some use cases. 3 years ago, Dr. Lee came here and he presented totally 6 use cases. But we tried 4 use cases for 3 years. The first use case is graduate certificate issuance, and second use case is to reduce various paperwork in banking process. Both use cases at the top are typical use case when you read DID papers or articles. The third one is to use it as an access control card to enter building or office. And fourth use case is using DID as a single sign-on. We experimented all 4 use cases. Some worked well and some didn't. Regarding our experiment, I prepared 3 topics to think over. One is ecosystem, second is the application of the DID, and third is the evolution. First, it's the ecosystem. ID ecosystem requires someone to provide trust for a person's identity. In the physical world, it used to be government, university, or company. In our DID ecosystem, mobile network operator provide trust for a person's identity, which is very similar to our CI system. And mobile network operators are trust anchors. In Korea, mobile network operators work together to provide ID systems. And also, we need some issuers and verifiers for some certificate. Issuer issues credentials, verifiers accept and verify the credentials. For the issuers, we got mobile network operator and universities. And for verifiers, we have bank and credit card companies and normal companies. After we built this ecosystem in 2019, we launched the service in 2020. We called the service Initial. The Initial has an identity wallet in the smartphone. It manages cryptographic keys and credentials, such as graduate diploma. And at the top, there are mobile subscriber credentials. That's the base of trust, which is issued by the mobile network operator. And at the bottom, there are other credentials from other issuers. SK Telecom provides at the bottom blockchain network and Initial platform SDK. And any company in the ecosystem can build a system with a blockchain network and SDKs. They rely on mobile subscriber credentials for user authentication. And regarding business model, issuer and holder pay nothing. And the verifier, if verifier runs blockchain networks, then they pay nothing. But if verifier doesn't run blockchain and use our blockchains, then the verifier pay fee per transactions basis. More details. First example is there's a case of issuing a college diploma to transcript. User access to the initial application, select the college, and access to university system. University system check the validity of the people with the mobile subscriber credential and check if the user is correct, and then they issue the diploma. And second example is the mobile phone insurance. Before the DID is introduced, when the phone is damaged, the phone owner needs to do paperwork to receive insurance. But with initial service, paperwork were reduced. Until now, those use cases are fine. But we got some barriers when expanding our services. For example, people prefer using familiar ID system. Our ID system is very new, so people need time to accustom to our systems. So we try to make them use more our systems. So we work together with the government, and also we try to apply our technology to mobile ID card, IoT, and login functions. For example, the Korean government has already provided electronic certificate. We cooperated with the government to allow initial users to access the e-government certificate system. For example, property deed and health insurance document. And also, Korean government has some DID system. One of them is COVID-19 vaccine certificate. The COVID-19 vaccine certificate has its own DID wallet. Our initial application can use both the COVID-19 vaccine DID wallet and SKT's initial ID wallets. And next is the integration of the initial system with the mobile access control card. By using credentials stored in ID wallet, people can use it as a normal ID card to prove themselves and enter a building. For example, there are Korea University. It's a big university. The Korea University student can enter a university building and borrow books from university library with our initial application. And also, we integrated our initial system with the IoT system. In Korea, the capital Seoul has many old buildings, old bridges. For safety reasons, at the old buildings there are sensors to detect vibration or trembling or slanting. The sensors store the data in the blockchain, and building owners and public officials can access the data through our initial system. And we finished the developed, but we are waiting for launching. This system is the DID sign-in. For example, university students in Korea can enroll other universities' lectures, but it's complex. So DID sign-in can help complex multiple university sign-in problems. Until now, our performance is that in Korea, university and telecom-related use cases are entry point for DID technology adoption. 380 out of 386 universities issue college diplomas transcript in our systems, but some credentials are using DID, but some are not. And 55 public certificates can be issued in our systems, and our customer service is getting better with our DID systems. The next is the evolution. In DID, user's credentials stored in the smartphone. That's why it's very secure and private. But when the user wants to DID log in, user has to go to visit the PC web browser and go back to smartphone to authenticate himself or herself, and then the user has to go back to PC browser. So we think that if there is a wallet in the cloud, it would be helpful. Initial service will manage both wallets and device wallet and cloud wallets. The two wallet system leads to platform evolution. DID platform can support ID wallet in cloud. So do you remember the systems at the blockchain and the SDK? SDK is not enough, so we developed the platforms. We are doing R&D about application of DID to DID sign-in and IoT and digital asset. Thus, platform evolution leads to the ecosystem evolution. The picture on the left is the ecosystem we first made in 2019. But now we know that there should be more consideration for users and developers. To make the idea familiar to users, we are trying to make more effort to promote the activities for our systems. And for developer, we are providing technical materials and so on. Until now, that's what we have done for 3 years on decentralized ID. If you have any questions, you can mail at the bottom here. And thank you for listening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. If I could just invite my panelists up to the stage, please.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, good show so far. Can I get you both to just introduce yourselves and who you work for and what do you do?
Hi guys. Hi everyone. My name is Zhang Yi. I come from Ant Group. As you know, Ant Group is a fintech company. So I come from the technology part. The division that I work with is basically develop the security products for our company. Security products including identity verification solutions, anti-money laundering solutions in order to make it more compliant. It also includes risk management platform to prevent fraud and scam. Primarily that I have two responsibilities. One is that I promote a solution to our internal businesses like Alipay, like our bank in China, like our virtual bank in Hong Kong. Second responsibility is that we also make it as a product and commercialize it to sell it to customer and market.
Okay.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Richard, for inviting me. My name is Guillermo Borsi. I'm heading data and identity at TeleSign. Actually, it means that today we are in TeleSign, we're creating trust between enterprise and their end users through different type of solutions, from the onboarding to the account integrity there. And we know that trust is a currency these days, so this is very important to make sure that we do that with a data solution and provide identity in context.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the introductions, guys. So, Guillaume, in terms of TeleSign, we're seeing obviously digital adoption's taken a quantum leap over the last 2 years. And you work with some of the biggest websites in the world. How have you been supporting them to meet this new demand, and what have you seen emerge over that period?
So, very good question. Actually, we have seen a very interesting things that it's no wonder for anyone, but over the last, during the pandemic, we've seen some numbers coming from very reputable companies that are around here. That in the early days of the pandemic, the digitalization of the society accelerated by 3 to 4 years. It's pretty huge, right? So you had people in our societies that never been online. So for enterprises like the big giants of the web, but others like retails and so on, banks, traditional banks, it was a challenge to just understand who were these users. So our goal at TeleSign was really to help them to have someone I don't know to someone I know, someone I trust. It was really our goal there. That's been a challenge there, and also really bringing that continuous trust and making sure that once these people were knowing each other's enterprise and end users, you keep that trust in between them. So this is really what we have seen over the last couple of years for web enterprises and how we serve them.
Thanks very much. And from an Ants Group's perspective, I guess you've seen some technology advancements, but I guess you've seen some things in policy that you've had to comply with. So, what's the key things you've seen from those perspectives?
That's right. From Ants' perspective, we agree that the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of technologies. We have observed that the many service and companies offer their solution and service online. But the challenge for them is that before they open their solution, their service, can they trust the end user? That's why there must be a way to validate the user's identity. We also see the huge demand in the market. Well, from the industry that we work with, the banking industry, eKYC has been widely adopted in our region. eKYC is basically validate the user's identity card by computer vision, and then match the face selfie against the photo and ID to create a trusted identity that you can leverage in your service providing. So such so-called trend has also been observed from telco industry, like telcos in China. Chinese government has already mandated that you have to make sure who the user is before you provide service to the SIM card user. Indonesia as well. Indonesia mandate all the user has to type in the name and ID number before they activate the SIM card. Recently, there's additional trends. The regulators in Philippines, they also want to push for such initiative. They actually start the bill. The bill is right now just under the signature from the president. So once that's been signed, Philippines will also mandate real name verification. The last trend is in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, the Office of Communication Authority, OFCA, has released a policy that you have to validate your identity before you use a SIM card. Coincidentally, the starting date is from today, 1st March. So earlier today, Ant just released our solution with one of the largest telco in Hong Kong to help them verify their SIM card user's identity.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, in terms of identity, one of the big questions is around business model, and then what the business model looks like. What kind of use cases have you seen emerge that are generating revenue?
Well, we think there's a huge use cases generated from the so-called digitalization process. For example, we're working with one of the telco in Philippines to improve their in-store user purchase experience. So users go there and verify themselves through a kiosk or an iPad and get them verified by the system, and then they can enjoy the service there. There's also an initiative from the telco to improve their online experience, user journey experience. For example, they can add the identity verification and use the authentication component into their mobile app or website, so that you don't have to prove yourself with any agent in the physical store. Okay. Actually, Ant Group, we have to do more. For example, we are particularly strong in payments. So we have developed the payment app and payment ecosystem, payment system. So we actually help some of the telco companies transform. For example, Vodacom in South Africa, we help them to build a super app. It's an app from the application side to the payment system side. And then this super app can enable Vodafone customers to pay their bill online, to make purchase online, and allow their companies, small and medium-sized companies, to take loan from the telco. We also built some joint venture company with telco. For example, in Philippines, we set up a joint venture company with Globe. The company is called Mint. They have a super app called Gcash. Gcash is one of the unicorn app in Philippines. We help them to build the whole payment system and application. We help them to manage the identification and also the risk management. So without the experience we took from the financial industry, there's no way for such an app to exponentially grow their user base and also manage the risk that along with the user increase.
Okay. And Guilherme, and from your perspective of TeleSign, how have you seen the use of mobile operator data and how that's integrated into the use cases which you're seeing?
So it's very interesting actually today because you have a lot of data out there, right? We're talking earlier about physical data, online data, and so on. There is a lot of interesting identity solutions that have been on the market for physical data, online data. But one of the things we have seen is that today mobile operators have a lot of interesting network signals that are unique in the world, actually. They are the only one having a visibility on that. And from that perspective, this is very interesting to work with mobile operators to provide and resolve for challenges such as account takeover. So really plaguing the whole industries, or it's in e-commerce, in finance, fintech, and so on. And this is where the mobile operators are really helping the ecosystem and providing these unique signals coming from their network. We are talking about usually some type of attack like SIM swap attack, recycle numbers that are reused to create synthetic identities and so on. So this is really where the mobile operator is going to help to feed the whole ecosystem in terms of identity.
Right. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting, but how big is some of those opportunities, really? Are they significant enough for people to want to move into that space?
Definitely. It's challenging with the mic. So definitely, when you look at the numbers and the type of, I think a few weeks ago, a lot of people might have seen that in the news. Just the FBI was releasing some numbers about the multi-million-dollar attack on SIM swap. If you look also about the type of attack that on account takeover, crypto wallets are the ones that are the most targeted because they are also the most lucrative. And where we are not talking about a few $1,000s of scam there, but about millions of dollars each time there is this kind of things happening. So the opportunity and how to address that is really gigantic. And the mobile operators worldwide have to really realize that by creating the right ecosystem with the identity provider, with the risk provider, they're going to really help to counter a strike on these fraudsters and really help to eliminate a lot of frauds there.
Okay, and I suppose just moving on a little bit in terms of, we talked a lot about the digital world already, but is Ant Group seeing any examples where you're seeing the digital world and the physical world come together and maybe bridge that gap?
Absolutely. So I think identity is the bridge to connect digital world and physical world. But we have a client in Bangladesh. It's called Bcash. It's also a mobile wallet company. And then they also have physical branches over the country because the people there doesn't have no smartphone. A lot of them doesn't have smartphone. So what do we do is that they ask the agent to use a mobile phone to validate users' identity, and then bring them into the digital world. And then those end user can send money, transfer money through SMS in the end. So that is how the technologies can embrace the M-Bank people from the end developer country to make them enjoy more service offered by telco companies.
Okay. And then just moving on, this is an opportunity. We heard you say that there's an opportunity here that's quite huge in terms of fraud and authentication. What Guillermo, is the challenges that you see? Is it regulatory usage?
I think there was multiple dimension in terms of challenges and issue. Also, we have seen over the last couple of years a better adoption in terms from the carriers of offering this type of service. But most likely it's about the ubiquity of the signals that can be offered, right? Today, even thanks to the GSMA and Mobile Connect, there is some standards that have been created, but you still see that not everybody is adopting these. Another problem is also the pricing. You want to be able to compete with other provider of risk signals out there, but you need to be also competitive from a pricing perspective. The adoption there is definitely going to be there. We have seen a lot of enthusiastic customers using these signals, definitely. I mean, enthusiastic, when you get fraud, you're never enthusiastic, right? But definitely adopting these signals was for them a relief and going to help on the long term to create a healthy ecosystem there.
Okay.
Yeah, the challenge that I see, it does not only come from the data side. It's also come from the algorithm. Because on group we are using artificial intelligence algorithm. We see a trend that the regulators impose regulation on these algorithms. For example, we noticed that Singapore PDPC, Private Data Protection Commission, has recommended that all the algorithms using in identity industry has to be explainable, transparent, and fair. Similar regulation has been observed from Hong Kong regulator, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HKMA, which is also the central bank in Hong Kong, has requested that all these AI company has to be provide explainable, auditable, and ethical algorithm. So therefore, we actually put a lot of effort, not just to meet the functionality required from the customer, but also to make sure our algorithm is more robust, more explainable, and more reliable. So before we solve the trust problem between our customer and their end user, we have to make sure that our algorithm is trusted by the regulator.
Okay. I guess in terms of the people in this room, if there was one or two things you would like them to take away, maybe that could start to see this grow even faster, what may that be? Maybe Guillermo, we'll start with you.
So definitely for the future of identity, definitely there's. Okay, we'll keep the mask. For the future of identity, we see a few different alleys of opportunities for growing for the mobile operators. First, it's the mobile operators alone are not the only answer. This is part of a consortium, right? This is where we are sharing the fraud problem, where there is network signals that are provided, and there is also a lot of information shared. This leads to a lot of challenges in terms of data sharing. This leads to a lot of how to ensure that you are also fair with your algorithm, definitely. But that's also the exciting part of the challenge that we see for the future, and making sure that the way we're building or product or solution for the customers and the end users is really in equation with different type of value that mobile operators can provide. The credit bureau can provide all the information that the mobile numbers, the IP address, the email address can provide all together, making sure that all these information together are creating a 360 view of the end users, but in a very fair way, and making sure this is also adaptable at a global scale. Because this is really the holy grail, right?
Yeah, it's cool. Same.
I echo what Gil mentioned about, there's one side demand for company to share data with each other. On the other hand, there's no stringent requirement from regulator you cannot share because of data privacy. So I do believe that what Intrum shared, that decentralized ID system could be the future of identity verification. Why? Because based on the consortium blockchain, people can put their results on the chain in a trusted manner, and then using technology to protect privacy. For example, there is this recent trend about privacy preservation computation technology. You don't have to share the details of personal information but still can enable the algorithm to take the data as input to train them. So in our group, we also build a decentralized ID system. This is in-house product. So basically, each node, which typically will be a member of the blockchain, can request and rely on another node to validate their customer. We also use zero-knowledge proof, which is one type of privacy-preserving computation technology to protect the privacy information flow on the chain. So with this type of mechanism, we believe they will generate more use cases. For example, with this kind of a DID system, you could basically acquire user through your partners. You don't have to acquire user by yourself. You can rely on other company to get your user. Secondly, if you have all the information stored on the blockchain, you can basically create a multi-party risk management system. You can allow data from each party and protect your company, so to prevent the data silo problem.
Okay. In terms of the future, I guess for TeleSign, we had a little bit around what Ant was saying. What's your direction? What's going to be next in terms of the direction that you're going?
Direction is really, as mentioned, we've seen creating, as I was mentioning, really the bridge between the online and the physical world is really key to master that, right? Once you master that part, it's just about how do you share globally these data, making sure that you respect each of the local regulation. So the decentralized ID is really definitely one of the main challenge for the future to resolve for. And what we have seen also is working with the carriers in a much concerted way, making sure that we know there is local regulation, but these local regulation need also to take in mind that it's business are global these days. And we need to also think global but act local, but that's going to be also for the carriers and how is it going to share the data, one of the main challenge for the future.
And in terms of that regulatory point, I think you touched on it earlier on. Is that something that you're seeing different market to market? Is there any specific regulation which you think needs to be focused on?
Well, I think it's going to be a trend. It's going to be a trend. We see more and more countries, regulators, has announced their so-called new regulations towards ID verification in telco industry. We also see more and more so-called regulators impose their requirements on the algorithm. It's very similar to what we observed from payment industry. Payment industry, when we first have eKYC, online ID verification, a lot of central bank doesn't believe it, but gradually they realize that this is a practical way for the service provider to acquire users. So more and more central banks accept eKYC as an approach to verify users' identity. So I think pretty much telco industry will have the similar trend.
And is there any future plans for anything new in Ant that you're going to?
Yeah, we definitely keep on being innovative and come up with new solutions. So future, we observe that our customer really want to have a one-stop solution from compliance to risk, from onboarding to ongoing. So therefore, I think we're going to create a SaaS platform to include all this ID verification, authentication, anti-money laundering, and risk management system on the SaaS platform, offer it to the market.
And do you see any future developments? This is broad, everybody's talking about Metaverse at the show. So do you see there being a role for this type of data in something like that, in terms of the roles that you play?
Absolutely. We think that blockchain is the foundation of Metaverse. And then our group also invests a lot in blockchain technologies. Yeah. So we basically have solutions like NFT, and we help the museum to get their products in digital formats. We also have a trust pool, which is so-called it's cross-border payments blockchain platform. So that will be the foundation of the Metaverse system we create. We also foresee that identity will be another pillar exist in the Metaverse, because without identity, that you cannot share data, you cannot share information with other people in the metaverse. So those will be the direction that we're going towards.
Okay. Is there any? Have you got any thoughts, Guillermo?
Yeah, I think the metaverse is one of the components which can be a challenge. I think recently saw that it would be a $1 trillion industry on a yearly basis, right? But another one which is where a lot of challenges is also connected devices. We're going to see where the security can be easily compromised these days. So there will be a lot of work also to be done at that level. The good news is that the carriers are also very involved into the connected devices, and for them this is also a huge opportunity in terms of identity and risk from that to provide additional layers of solution and protection on that side of the house.
Okay, then, well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much to the audience for your time today. I'm sure you've got a very busy agenda ahead of you, and I hope you're all enjoying the show. I'd like to thank my first speaker from SKT, very, very interesting. I'd like to just take an opportunity to remind you about that GSMA forum, which I told you about. We've actually got our next meeting coming up at the end of March, where we'll be looking at the Canadian mobile identity model and talking to Endstream, and they'll be sharing our services, sharing how they've built their service. If you are interested in joining that session, then please do just go online and go onto gsma.com/identity, where you'll be able to find those details out and post your interest in joining the session. So again, I'd like to thank my speakers, and I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time. Thank you.